This is Brendan with Sons of Speed. We are today in the Chevy Blazer Premier all-wheel drive, and we are going to take it up Pikes Peak just to see how it does. Now, I've been driving this around pretty much for the last few days, and it's been a surprising ride. This thing, when you're driving it through Colorado mountain roads like I've been doing, feels just like a car. You forget that you're in an SUV. It has so much Camaro DNA in it. It just comes right through in the chassis. It really drives nice. It's fairly quick. It's got that V6 out of the Camaro with over 300 horsepower, and it's got a lot of bells and whistles on the car. It is missing a few though, and when you think about this price tag of $49,290 as it sits right now, without radar cruise control, without any lane keep assist or anything like that, you start to wonder about the value proposition. But they put that money into the suspension, into the chassis, and it drives like it. You really can feel it. So while something like a Santa Fe will be a bit more for your money as far as what you get, it's not going to drive as nice. I can tell you that right now. So let's take it up Pikes Peak and see how it does. So while this is not the RS version, which is the sportier version of the Blazer, it's the Premier version, which is the nicer version. You have a lot of stitched leather. There's a little stripe of suede in the leather armrest. It's very clean dash, mostly digital. A little bit of analog left and right. You got the nice touch screen right here, which has CarPlay and Android Auto. Push button start. Pretty much everything you'd expect to see in a car costing this much, except a couple things that are a bit of a problem. One is that the transmission has no paddle shifters. It's a 9-speed automatic. Second and third gear, just like the Ford Edge ST, for some reason, are almost identical in their gear ratios. So there's almost no difference between second and third gear. The only way to shift manually is by a switch on the side of the shifter, which is very inconvenient to use. You can't even just move it over and shift with the entire stick up and down like you can on other cars. And you really miss the paddle shifters. Now, they can't use the paddle shifters because they put the volume on the right and the seek on the left behind the wheel, and then you got a lot going on the wheel with the infotainment system and the cruise control on the left. This is not radar cruise control for $49,290, so it's an additional option beyond that. But what you get is that beautiful V6 engine. The transmission is pretty good in drive, and razor sharp steering. I mean, almost to the point where you kind of wish that it had a drive mode, a touring drive mode, that just deadened the steering a little bit when you just want to cruise, because it's twitchy. It's very twitchy. That's good on a mountain road. It's just not good when you're just trying to just kind of take it easy and drive. So variable steering effort would be awesome if they could incorporate some drive modes into this thing. Now, the two-wheel drive, it's got an all-wheel drive system, but it's part-time, so you can select two-wheel drive. Unlike Blazers of the past, that is a front-wheel drive system, which is going to throw a lot of people off because Blazers have traditionally been based more on trucks, at least back in the 90s, and it was always a rear-wheel drive and then a four-wheel drive system based off of a truck chassis. And this one is an all-wheel drive system, not four-wheel, so there's no low range like you would get on a traditional four-wheel drive. So this is not an off-road vehicle by any stretch of the imagination. But what it is more of a sports SUV. They really put the sports in the sport utility. There's a lot less utility and more sport. Let's just put it that way. The nice thing about the system, though, is in two-wheel drive, you'll get better gas mileage, and you honestly can't tell that it's two-wheel drive. It gets up and goes, and there's no torque steer. It drives beautifully, especially in the twisty mountain roads. The only time you really even want to put it in all-wheel drive, at least as I've been driving it, is when there's just inclement weather, or you might be on a dirt road, something like that. Otherwise, amazingly, front-wheel drive feels great. So kudos to Chevy for really doing a good job on a front-wheel drive chassis, because most of the time you don't get that nice crisp drive feeling that you can expect in a rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive vehicle. You also get a weather mode, sport mode, and sport mode engages all-wheel drive, and then just regular all-wheel drive. There's also a trailering mode, as well, if you want to trailer some stuff. With the V6 all-wheel drive, you get a pretty decent amount of towing. It's not great. I think it's 4,500 pounds. Probably enough to get your vet and its trailer to the track and back. We're about halfway up Pikes Peak now, maybe a little less than halfway. There's this nice reservoir over here, and it flattens out, and then we're just going to keep going up. And then on the way down is where we're really going to test out the transmission, because in a little bit of testing I did in some other hills, not Pikes Peak style, just other roads, first gear didn't really hold much at all. It just kind of went all the way to red line and did about 35 miles an hour. In sport mode, in second and third gear, I kind of got a bit of a better hold, but it wasn't really that steep. So this is going to be interesting going back downhill. It's just like, it feels like you're in a Camaro. In fact, the seating position is so low you almost forget that you're in an SUV. And there's no top heaviness, there's no body roll. It's really taut. It's a very good suspension setup. There's been a lot of these Nash Metropolitans here. There must be a meeting of some kind. Look at that. That's awesome. These are really tight turns. The Blazer just, I mean, it doesn't feel like an SUV at all. The steering is so nice. You know, GM just makes some absolutely fantastic chassis these days. And the one that they're putting into the Camaro, on the ATS, it's one of the best ever made. It's such a great handling chassis. Watch this hairpin up here. That's the other thing. The Blazer has a fantastic turning radius. For the SUV, this thing has no problem making any of these tight switchbacks or turning around. Well, if you happen to find yourself in Colorado, take a drive up Pikes Peak. $15 per person is definitely worth it. Just stay away from the edge. We're perpendicular with clouds. We're like, you just look out your window and there's the bottom of the cloud right there. And this is something else. I mean, for somebody from Chicago, where our elevation is 642 feet, being 15,000 feet in the air is a different experience. But it is very, very cool. It was mile marker 19, elevation 14,115 feet, and climbing. Although we're almost there. So while the Blazer has great handling on road, it's off-road with the 21-inch tires. Doesn't necessarily handle the big ruts very well. But you can't have both. You can't have excellent on-road handling and excellent off-road handling. You gotta pick one or the other, and the Blazer picks on-road. So this is the top of Pikes Peak. Well, check out this parking spot. Yeah. Push button electronic brake is definitely going on. And we're going to go out and take a look around Pikes Peak. Alright, so the Blazer, unfortunately, every time you restart it, will put you back into two-wheel drive. So we're going to go back into sport mode for the trip down. If you look out that way, you can see a cloud is starting to overtake the summit. And it's time to see how she does on the descent. So you do get rear cross traffic alerts, which do pick up people, like that dude right there in his motorcycle helmet. That's pretty brave coming up here on a motorcycle. So props to you. So if you happen to come up to Pikes Peak in 2020 or later, should be a very nice parking lot up here for you. Right now it's simply a bunch of rocks. That reminds me, one thing the Blazer has that I have not yet been able to figure out that you can shut off and you may not be able to is auto start stop. So yes, it has AS and it has no AS button. Alright, so to reach the manual shifting mode, you got to put it into L, which is low. It might as well be M for manual. And right now we're in L2. And we're going to need to want to get that down into L1, but it will not shift for me to L1. Chevy, what are you doing to me? going like 12 miles an hour and it won't give me first gear. No, it just keeps flashing L2. I mean, at least it's not lying to me and telling me it's in one like the Avalon would lie to you and tell you what gear you're in. But riding the brakes down here is not going to work, so let's come to a complete stop. There we go. Now we're in first gear. All right. Yeah, it does not really hold very well in first gear, I gotta say. And since Chevy isn't giving you a manual transmission in these vehicles, it's 5,000 RPM. That's not good. So while the Blazer gets up Pikes Peak very well, the ride down might not be so great. Let's try it in second gear, even though that's counterintuitive. Yeah, that's not working any better. Alright, we're completely off the brakes. First gear, about to hit 30 miles an hour, 5,200 RPM. That's not good. This is not that steep of an incline. I mean, it's an decline actually. But if this was a manual car in first gear, you would probably be about 10 miles an hour less, maybe even more. This is something that Chevy probably ought to address in the transmission. Give just a better hold in first gear. This should be holding me to go about 15 to 20 miles an hour. And if I wanted more speed, I can go up to second gear or third gear. But having to use the brakes a lot is not great for hill descent. So, we'll give you a little bit of a pass this time, Chevy, because this is a brand new car, but we gotta work on that. Alright, so down below the tree line, we're still getting first gear over 30 miles an hour, over 5,500 RPM, but thankfully, since once it gets back into the tree line, it's not that tight. Kind of let it coast in first gear, and just hit the brakes for the turns. Good brakes. Good job on that, Chevy. It's no pedal fade whatsoever going downhill yet. And yeah, this thing likes to turn in. It's, I would love to get one of these on a racetrack, actually. Well, at least if it doesn't hold the speed very good, it does handle very good, so you can take the turns faster. There's that. Down at the lower elevations, we're back by the Crystal Reservoir. Second, third gear, no problem. It's much, much better than way up at the top. And we actually got the temp up to 300 degrees on the engine in first gear, but when we started being able to use second and third gear, that quickly dropped back down to normal. So all in all, it's survived Pikes Peak. It could do better on the gearing, but on the way up, no problems. On the way down, brakes held up just fine. So just despite getting a little warm in the engine and not having that gearing that you really want to slow the car down, thing did great. So yeah, survived Pikes Peak.